that doesn't really look like it does. But, or maybe it already did and we blew past it earlier. But independence basically is, I mean, I'm going to have to give kind of a vague definition of it, because the definition of independence I think actually means is given as probability of A and B equals probability of A times probability of B. That's how people like to define independence, which is a little circular. But what you think of independence meaning is basically that one of the events does not influence the other whatsoever. So if you know that one event happened or did not happen, that does not change in the slightest the probability that the other event happened or did not happen. That's essentially what it means. So when you're looking at it as a red die and a green die, they're independent because, like, what the red die rolled does not influence what number comes up on the green die. But if I were to ask you, like, what's the probability that the red die shows an odd number and the red die shows, I'm trying to think of one that would give you a different answer, and it's surprisingly difficult because of like mathematical coincidences. But like, well, let's say that I were to randomly pick a number from 1 to 8. Let's say I'm rolling an 8-sided die now, right? And I want the probability that the number I roll is both, no, it's not going to do it either. Okay. It's hard for me to think of problems. But basically, if the two events depend on each other, like if it's a red die and then the same red die later, and you're asking a different question about it, one of them could influence me because they both depend on the value of the same red die. So then you have to be careful. But if it's two completely different events, you can isolate them, they're independent, then you can multiply, and that makes it easier. All right. Let's talk about the grunters and the screamers some more. The grunters play the screamers 4 times. So if you're 75% likely to win any given game, and here we're making a pretty big assumption, right? We're assuming the games are all independent. Really, a lot of times in actual sports, it doesn't make sense to assume this because, like, if your team can win and have the psychological advantage, right? The other team is like, oh no, we just lost. And that actually makes them less likely to win. Ethan, yes, that's correct. Your second answer, that is. So, assuming that, and like, if you've seen, I don't know if Math Counts National was just this past weekend. I don't know if any of y'all watched it, but the countdown round at Nationals is always insane with how fast they buzz in. But there's a lot of streaks going on with that also. Like someone will get their answer right. They'll be like, I'm on a roll. The other person's like, oh no, I can't compete with this guy. And then it kind of makes it more likely that the person who answered first is going to win. So it's really good to assume that the probabilities are independent in these types of situations. But here, if you assume they are, yeah. Ria, that's correct. If you assume they are, let's talk about how you do it then. A couple of y'all have gotten it already. If you assume they are, then, well, 75%, I'm going to write that as a fraction instead, right? I don't like it very much as a percentage. But it's 3/4, right? And I want to just basically multiply 3/4 by itself 4 times because it's the probability that they win their first game times second game times third times fourth. Katie, I have no idea if that's right. What did you do? Yeah, that's not right. The numerator should not be divisible by 5. But you calculate. Yeah, 3 to the 4 is 81, 4 to the 4 is 256. One of the reasons I don't like you to give me an answer that's not in lowest terms is that it takes me a lot longer to figure out if it's the right answer or not. All right, 81 over 256 here. Any questions? Here's the trickier one. The evidence by the fact that it's longer. This is a little World Series work, although I think the World Series is maybe 5 out of 9 instead of 4 out of 7. Anyone know? I think it's 5 out of 9. One has won 4 games. says right here that this is the same format as the World Series. Ethan, I am amazed by your hubris for not even having read the last couple of sentences of the problem, but that is the wrong answer. But I'm not finished yet. Still wrong, Ethan. What's the probability that not only the Gunters win, but that they win in exactly 7 games? Oh, what are you going to do now?